making sure I'm camera ready there. Lyndon S. Smith is our guest. So what we've done is, well, I could give them a little rundown, as we did an entire Sunday night together where we thought we were taping, and then we had microphone issues, and then we ended up talking for an hour afterwards, and then an hour on the phone today, and we thought, well, let's go ahead. Lyndon has been such a good sport. He is back to do Sunday Night Live with us on Tuesday night at a completely different time. So if you do have comments, please do make a comment in the section. I will go ahead and stop for those. And you can always drop us a line, and this channel is small and intimate enough to make sure that we can get back to all of you. So remember, really quickly, that this episode of Living Theosophy Tuesday Night Live is brought to you in collaboration with the Theosophical Society headquarters, London, England. For more information on their diploma courses, please click the link that I will provide below. I have taken the first one. I'm on the second one. Lyndon is currently on the London first diploma course. How are you enjoying that, Lyndon?
Very much so, yes. I'm just entering the 4th module, actually.
Look at you go, really? Good. Well, we can't say enough good things about it. It's a great place to start. So look for those links down below. And that's with Eric McGough. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Eric is also the teacher in the second diploma course. I also invite you all to visit the Virtual Center for Theosophical Studies. A link will also be included down below. That is the online institute dedicated to the study of esoteric teachings and principles with Luke Ironside and the folks at Adyar. So there's lots to be talked about there, but let's get to it now. We have him here with us while we're on YouTube, and it was an issue with Zoom. There were other Zoomers that were having this issue. Yeah. So we're grateful. Thank you, YouTube, for stepping up to the plate, and Zoom for working out the bugs. It was drama. Welcome to the enthusiastic and delightful, dear and precious Lyndon S. Smith. Lyndon is a chartered building surveyor who has worked for English Heritage as well as on a myriad of structures, both old and new. He runs his own practice in the southwest of England. He's not too far away from where I am right now. I think about an hour and a half, you said, yeah?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Just had a big thunderstorm. Lyndon has a degree in architecture and surveying and has been a dedicated student of Theosophy, get this, since the age of 8. He has led a lifelong journey filled with recognition of profound importance of these ancient teachings. He's lived in Canada for a year, and he attended the Theosophical Lodge in Manchester in the late 1990s and started a wonderful friendship with their late President Denise Taggart. He always has wonderful things to say about Denise. Like to talk about that a little bit if we have time. Lyndon is currently on the first diploma course, as we said, out of the Theosophical Society England headquarters out of London. And we met here on this channel. Which is a great story, because it was the same text brought us together, which we will be talking about, which is the subject of our meeting tonight. And it is called The 14 Lessons in Yogi Philosophy and Oriental Occultism by Yogi Ramacharaka, also known as William Walker Atkinson. Everyone, please give a very warm welcome to the incredibly patient and tolerant and wonderful Lyndon S. Smith. Thank you for being here, Lyndon. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the introduction, Anne. That was wonderful. And yes, we did have some technical problems, but we've soon overcome those, so there's no problem there at all.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
Can't find the solution if you're still on the problem, but it was quite an adventure. We learned a lot. It
was really. We thought it was us at first, but anyway. So if we could go to the slides, please, Anne, and they will prompt the...
Saying hello to Robert. Robert is watching. Thank you for being with us, Robert. We will stop and answer some questions as well. Let's go ahead and open the presentation, which has, oh, there it is. Okay. Let's go make it big and share the screen. Can you see that? Is it on there yet?
Yes, it is. And we're
okay,
yeah, we're there as well. So that's good.
Yay. Good.
So the very moving book, which is the 14 Lessons in Yogi Philosophy and Oriental Occultism by, as you said, Yogi Ramacharaka. I just want to highlight this wonderful book, which covers so much wonderful ground, and it's a really good starting point for anyone who's new to Theosophy. But it's also an advanced book as well, because it does cover 14 separate, quite interesting subjects in some detail. It's only 220 pages long, but it's an all-round very good starter. It's of short chapters of 14 lessons. So if we could go to the second slide, because I'd like to talk a little bit about the author. So here we have William Walker Atkinson, about 1900.
Great
So
photo, right?
yes,
Good
it
photo.
is. He wrote under a pen name of Yogi Ramacharaka. So I will always refer to him now as Atkinson or Ramacharaka. So the book that Atkinson wrote came to me through Anne's beautiful voicing on the Living Theosophy website, which I'll talk a little bit about shortly. So William Walker Atkinson wrote under the pen name of Yogi Ramacharaka. He was born in Baltimore, Maryland, in the USA in 1862. At about the age of 15, it is said that he worked as a grocer helping his father. At about the age of 26, he married Margaret Foster Black of Beverly, New Jersey, and they had 2 children. It appears that Atkinson had a wonderful career. He was an attorney, a merchant, a publisher, and an author, and later on in his life became a very well-known occultist. From about 1882 onwards, particularly, and in 1894, he was admitted as an attorney at the bar of Pennsylvania in the US. But the stress and strain eventually took its toll, and he experienced a complete physical and mental breakdown and ended up in financial disaster. But that wasn't the end of Atkinson by any means. In the 1880s, he came across the New Thought movement, which was in the early years at the time in America. And in the last 30 years of his life, he wrote over 100 books under dozens of pseudonyms, from Theron Q. Dumont and Yogi Ramacharaka. But dozens of texts are only known because they were published by the same publishing house of the same address, the Yogi Publishing Society in Chicago, and of the same style. It is thought that he's the author of The Kabbalion, which was published in 1908, written by the nom de plume, the Three Initiates, another pseudonym of Atkinson, published by the Yogi Publishing Society. It is claimed that in 1893, while in Chicago at the World's Columbian Exposition, he met a one Baba Bharata, who was a pupil of the late Indian mystic Yogi Ramacharaka, but no records of either Bharata or Ramacharaka have ever been found. However, while Atkinson wrote under the pseudonym of Ramacharaka, he claimed to be Hindu, and by doing so helped to popularize Eastern concepts in America, with yoga and a broadly interpreted Hinduism being the areas of focus. The work of Ramacharaka were published over the course of nearly 10 years. And this book, which was published in 1903, comprises of 14 lessons, which is originally issued at the frequency of 1 lesson per month as a correspondence course. Atkinson became a member of the American Theosophical Society on the 28th of January 1903, and was a prolific author and editor of several magazines, including Suggestion, New Thought, and other advanced theosophical magazines from about 1906 to 1916. And he also wrote a number of articles contributing to the Theosophical journals at the time. Atkinson died on the 22nd of November in 1932 in Los Angeles, California in the USA at the age of 69.
Bless him. So grateful for him. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
So if we could go on to the 3rd slide, please.
Before we do, I just wanted to ask if you could expand like we did on the first one. Anybody who gets, I don't know, gets anything in a twist about the word occult, if we could expand on that a little bit. I've explained it quite a bit on this channel, but you explained it so beautifully before, because when we say the 14 lessons in Yogi philosophy and Oriental occultism, it is dismissed because of the prejudice that is associated to that word. Would you mind sharing a little bit on occultism, dear?
Yeah, sure. So I've always found that understanding the origin of a particular word and its etymology and how it's come through to English, because English is obviously a composite language, that we need to find out where the words come from and what they actually meant. And also with the changing of terms and phrases and words, some words can be very changed or be distorted over time. So etymology gives us a route back to the origin, and you also need to consider what the term was used at the particular time. So we're talking about the late 19th century here. So, so occultism does not mean, although it can mean, of or relating to magic, mystical, supernatural or magical powers, practices or phenomena, the Ouija board or table tapping as it's known. But in this sense, it means another sense of the word occult, which simply is beyond the range of ordinary knowledge and understanding,
That's true.
mysterious.
Can we repeat that just one more time? That occult here means, go ahead.
Beyond the range of ordinary knowledge or understanding, or mysterious.
Yes.
So
Yes.
once we
Outside
start to
the current
understand the
understanding.
etymology and where the words have come from, you start to understand how the title has come about.
Yes.
Other examples of this are, for example, I always use the word trust and not faith, because faith has become so broken as a word that it's no longer really functions in the context of theosophy. Spirit, again, is another word which has come through Middle English, through Anglo-Norman heritage to us from Latin, spiritus, which literally means to breathe, or respiration, breathe. So it could be interpreted as being vital breath. Again, other words and terms which might seem clumsy or awkward to the modern ear, such as ethnicity, does not refer to a particular part of humanity. It relates to a length of time of the whole of humanity, not an individual culture. And I want to be very, very strict about that, that it doesn't mean what we might interpret it to mean in the modern context.
That's true. Race is a wave of humanity. In the objects of theosophy, though, it is described that it is to create a universal brotherhood without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. In that particular moment, race does mean ethnicity. In all others, it simply means a wave of being. Please listen to what he is saying here, that a lot of people come into this. This has been cannibalized in the last century. A lot of these terms have been cannibalized. So please pay attention to what Lyndon is saying so beautifully here. Would you like to, are you ready to go on to the next one, dear?
Yes, sure. If we can move on to slide 3.
There we go.
So by way of introduction to the slide, I would just want to say that, that these are not my words or Anne's words. The focus is specifically on the text. It's nothing to do with me or Anne. It really is about the text. We are just passing this information to you. Yeah. I want to say that before we can progress with any of the teachings of the Theosophical doctrines, we must set ourselves aside and we must understand that the teachings come first, not our opinion, not our egos or our own personalities. And I think that's beautifully captured here by another seminal work by Mabel Collins, another fabulous writer, Light on the Path, quote, "Seek it not by any one road. To each temperament there is one road which seems the most desirable, but the way is not found by devotion alone, by religious contemplation alone, by ardent progress, by self-sacrificing labor, by studious observation of life. None alone can take the disciple more than one step onward. All steps are necessary to make up the ladder. The vices of man become steps in the ladder, one by one, as they are surmounted. The virtues of man are steps indeed, necessary." And again, beautifully captured here, each man is to himself absolutely the way, the truth, and the life. I can't really say it any better than what Mabel Collins put there.
So
beautifully captured.
I did want to mention, and we talked about this last time, is that a lot of the times when asked about man and God, higher self, lower self, a very good way to understand what is the lower self would be the vices. The higher self would be the virtues. As we look at greed and anger and fear and ignorance, those are the vices that we must overcome with patience and kindness and compassion and empathy. So very well said and perfect slides. Presentation is amazing, Lyndon. Thank you.
Good observation. Thank you, Anne.
I just wanted to point that out just so I could make sure you're not feeling by yourself, but this is all of your thoughts here on this amazing text. And remember, Theosophy is the star. We're just students. So if you're ready to go to the next one, I'm ready.
Please, if you can. So again, I just want to underpin what I said before about Theosophy is for all, which again is captured here in the 14 lessons by Ramacharaka. Quote, "We do not mean that the Eastern teachers insist upon the student blindly accepting every truth that is presented to him. On the contrary, they, the pupil, insist the pupils to accept as truth only that which can be proved for himself, as no truth is truth to one until he can prove it by his own experiments. But the student is taught that before many truths may be so proven, he must develop and unfold. The teacher asks only that the student have confidence in him as a pointer out of the way, and says, in effect, to the student, 'This is the way, enter upon it, and upon the path you will find the things which I have taught you. Handle them, weigh them, measure them, taste them, and know them for yourself.'"
Yes. Yes. Like you were saying, faith is almost like it's overused, a little hopeful. This is about knowledge. This is about
Yes.
experience. And again, like we said in the one that we lost, when a scientist needs to prove something, he has an experiment. For us to understand something as our own experience, to know something, we must experience it. So
Yes.
this is not about something being said to us and us hoping that it's happening or believing in it. It is through fact. So this is ancient knowledge. Very well said, and a beautiful quote from the 14 lessons.
Yes,
Thank you.
and the miraculous transformation between cold intellect and gnosis, or the knowing by heart, is what we're talking about here. That's the gold to be mined for. So if I can quote here on the Awakening of the Inner Self by Edward Abdill, who recently wrote a paper for the Theosophical Society, and this is only just an excerpt. Quote, "Many are so attached to their beliefs and that they identify with them. They think of themselves as Christians, Jews, or atheists. The search for truth is not an effort to prove what we believe. The search begins with an open mind and an acceptance of our ignorance." Indeed, very well put there.
And how? Yes, perfect. Thank you. Are you
So
ready to move on?
Yes, please, if we could. So
okay.
the next, so it's one back.
Oh no, did I miss?
No,
I'm
it's okay.
sorry.
It jumps forward. It's okay. So what I would like to say is how for me the 14 lessons or Theosophy as a body of knowledge is represented here by this slide, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I will say, for me, Theosophy encompasses all the great sciences which we can use to our advantage, as man has done. But for me, the limitations of science is that although biology is very good in describing the flesh and bones of us, the living being, physics will describe me as a moving entity and all the physical components. Chemistry will go and tell me all about the transmission of hemoglobin and oxygen in the blood, etc. But none of the sciences give me a position in relation to the whole. And that is where Theosophy has always been profoundly moving to me, because it is the golden frame around all of humanity's knowledge. It uses all of humanity's knowledge, and it doesn't turn any information away. Science, chemistry, maths, if you look at Theosophy, all of it is taken into account and considered. Here, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, HPB, said in her volume 11 of collective writings, I quote, "When applied to God or gods, it, Theosophy, became in every country theology. When in material nature, it was called physics and natural history. Concerned with man, it appeared as anthropology and psychology. And when raised up to the higher regions, it became known as metaphysics. Such is philosophy, the science of effects by their causes, the very spirit of the doctrine of karma, the most important teaching under various names of every religious philosophy and theosophical tenet, that belongs to no one religion, in, captured beautifully there by HPB.
Oh, very well said. That's a beautiful quote. I love that you put it in a frame too. I think we should all have that on our wall.
So what I'd like to do, if we could move on to the next slide now,
Okay.
which is an introduction to the 14 lessons by Yogi Ramacharaka, Yogi Publishing Society, Illinois, October 1st, 1904. If we jump onto the next, oh no, we can stay on this slide. So I'll just say a little bit about the 14 lessons. So we've all got some information on them. So it was published in 1904 as a correspondence course, and it was issued monthly. So that date does change a little bit. I was looking on the net for some Theosophical downloads a couple of years ago, actually, and I came across Anne's Living Theosophy YouTube channel. And I listened to the introduction which Anne gave to the 14 lessons, and straight away was deeply moved and recognized this text, although I hadn't heard it before. So I bookmarked it on my phone and on my MP3 player, and I listened to the 14 lessons over and over again while on holiday. I listened to some chapters maybe 2 or 3 times. I took notes. I remember being deeply moved and understanding new things. Again, with the voicing that you put to it, Anne, it makes it very accessible for somebody who's not a particularly strong reader.
It was a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Yes. So I recognize that everyone learns by their own way, which I've spoken about already. So if this isn't for you, if this doesn't work with you, maybe some other writings by Mabel Collins, HPB, or Annie Besant, which are all my favorites. I'm sure you'll find something.
They're here on the channel. I just wanted to shout out. I will include the links back to which ones Lyndon is referring to.
Yes.
But that's how this channel began, is because recognizing the importance of these teachings, I didn't know what else to do. And I've told you about this in the videos here on this channel, all of you, is that I just read it to put it out there into the digital world, to give it a little bit more an easier trajectory rather than being on the shelf. It's now out there, and so you may come across it as well. And by putting them into application, they truly have changed my life, and I just wish to be of service. So I didn't know what else to do. So the Voice of the Silence is also on this channel for free. You can listen to Light on the Path is on here for free. We do book studies of the Key to Theosophy. We have meetings with other Theosophists here. The main thing is just to share these teachings, humbly to be of service, to help to ease the unnecessary suffering of all beings. So that's, and I would never have met you, Lyndon, if I hadn't done that. And I'm so grateful.
I've got my copy.
Yeah, there we are. Look at that.
Thumb through and sticky notes on it on every page.
Yeah, the bookmarks. And it was dismissed in the beginning by pure Theosophists that said that this was pseudo-theosophy. And I think you and I have spoken about that they said, well, you know, it's not the real thing. But I know what it led me to. So for me, my application, it has led me to the secret doctrine and to the Voice of the Silence. So I am very grateful. So please carry on.
So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Anne. So what I'd just like to read for you here is, it is from the 14 lessons, but it isn't actually from the book. It's from Cosmic Consciousness by Book, which is quite a controversial book in its own right, but that doesn't matter because we're just looking at this excerpt here. For some hundreds of years upon the general planes of self-consciousness, an ascent to the human eye gradually, but from the point of view of cosmic evolution, rapid, has been made. In a race, large-brained, walking erect, gregarious, brutal, but king of all other brutes, man in appearance, but not in fact, was from the highest simple consciousness born the basic human faculty, self-consciousness, and its twin, language. From these and what went with these, through suffering, toil and war, through bestiality, savagery, barbarism, through slavery, greed, effort, through conquests infinite, through defeats overwhelming, through struggles unending, through ages of aimless semi-brutal existence, through sustenance on berries and roots, through the use of casually found stone or stick, through the life in deep forests with nuts and seeds, and on the shores of the waters with mollusks, crustaceans, and fish for food, through the greatest perhaps of human victories, the domestication and subjugation of fire, through the invention and art of the bow and arrow, through the taming of animals and the breaking of them to labor, through the long learning which led to the cultivation of the soil, through the adobe brick and the building of houses therefrom, through the smelting of metals and the slow birth of the arts which rest upon these, through the slow making of the alphabets and the evolution of the written word. In short, through thousands of centuries of human life, of human aspiration, of human growth, sprang the world of men and women as it stands before us and within us today, with all its achievements and possessions. For me, this was a particularly moving part of the book, largely because I can see in this where, or I'm reminded where I've come from and my heritage as a human on this planet, and how so many have passed before to overcome and to achieve even the minutest thing. When it talks about the stone and stick, how that was a revolution in its time, to stand on the pinnacle and take stock and be able to understand these teachings has been a momentous achievement for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And this achievement sometimes passes unnoticed, uncommemorated, but those who recognize the task which is before us, that which Theosophy presents to us clearly, can heed its call and recognize the profundity of what's being said here. And it is an achievement by its own definition to recognize how important Theosophy is, just as much as it was for the stick and stone and the domestication of the animal revolutionized humanity then, so will Theosophy revolutionize your perspective and your approach to life. Have you anything to add to that, Anne?
I am just so grateful for your passion and your empathy and your understanding, and all of these folks that we're studying with on the path. We all call ourselves students of Theosophy. These words that you are saying, there will come someone will stumble across this video and it will resonate with them as it resonates with you.
Yes.
And that's the whole point of us doing this. There is absolutely nothing I can possibly add to that other than to say thank you. And I'm so grateful for you.
Likewise.
Are you ready to move to the next?
Well, I'll just quote another quote which I've just added here. So this isn't scripted on the slide. So the true philosopher is the one who would lay no claim to the name whatsoever, who has discovered that the mystery of life is unapproachable by ordinary thought alone, just as the true scientist confesses he is completely ignorant of the principles which lie behind science. I can't say any more. It's just put there for you. So very moving.
It is very moving, and it's refreshing again to have this weekly show where there are folks that absolutely understand Theosophy. They've all had that aha moment of, oh my God, like Tapestry was saying, I'm home. I finally found it. I'm home. She's a statistician, a mathematician. You've got Pablo and Luke and all of these people who are right here with us, right here with you and I. And Petra, I love Petra, absolutely love Petra. Gary Kitchell's going to be on next week. These guys, he studied metaphysics. He has a degree in metaphysics. And they've all come here to say, this is where it's at. This is what I understand to be the closest thing to the truth on this planet.
Yes.
And that is why I'm dedicating my life, as you and I are, to share these teachings. It isn't about what we do or how we process them for you. Theosophy is about you.
Yes.
If you're watching and you're listening, look at these teachings, look at these links. Don't worry about us. We're walking alongside you. This is where the answers are, and they go way back, further than the 19th century. They are timeless and they belong to all. So I will let Lyndon carry on because our microphone is working. It's very exciting stuff. You should have seen what happened to us on Sunday. We should have, I do have some tape, but I'll have to use that for maybe a Christmas party outtake party. But anyway, here we go.
So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Anne.
Is this it?
Yeah, sorry, you're actually there. That's it, slide 8. So, so talking from my perspective now, and not quoting just for the minute. So the first big understanding was the septenate constitution of man, because nobody's ever really put this to me in this way, and ever contextualized me as a person or people in this way. So some faiths and traditions have 5 constituent parts, some have 3, the Holy Trinity. It doesn't matter, it really doesn't. It's just the idea that you are composed of 7 elements, as the Theosophical doctrine says. So the mental principles are something which really stood out to me, which it says in the 14 lessons, there are 3 fundamental elements of mentation which the human has. And I'll just read the quote here. Quote, "One of these lessons is that the awakening of the intellect does not necessarily make a creature a better being in the sense of being good. While it is true that an unfolding principle or faculty will give an upward tendency to man, it is equally true that some men are so closely wrapped in the folds of the animal sheath, so steeped in the material side of things, that the awakened intellect only tends to give them increased power to gratify their lower desires and inclinations." Now that is a warning here to understand, which I'm going to go into a little bit now in some detail. So if we could go on to the next slide, please, Anne. So we've got a depiction of the dog on the left and of a human on the right. It doesn't matter that it's male or female, the man figure or the dog represents animals per se. So on the left, we have a depiction of the animal kingdom, and on the right, we have a depiction of humanity or humans, and we have 3 layers of mentation, which the 14 lessons explains in great detail. So I want to just talk about a little bit about each of these levels of mentation, which I've put 1, 2, and 3, which I'll talk about now. So the first is the instinctive mind, which is number 1 on the illustration, which we share in common with most of the animal kingdom. And if you look at the 14 lessons, with the plants and minerals, also known as the subconscious or the unconscious mind to modern psychology. It says that the first dawn of the instinctive mind may even be seen in the minerals and plant kingdom. As they grow more distinct and higher up the scale, so this propensity to form the subconscious became stronger and stronger. Then in the world of the lower animals, and seeking an increasing manifestation of the instinctive mind, to an almost plant-like intelligence of the lower forms, until we reach a degree almost equal to the lowest form of human life. So that's why there's an overlap with number 1, with the animal and the man. Mm-hmm. The instinctive mind taught the animals how to build its nest, how to migrate before approaching winter, how to hibernate, and thousands of other things which the student of natural history will know. Among the lower animals, there is very little of that which we call consciousness, which I'll come on to in a second. The consciousness of the animal is almost automatic, and it's like sensation, but without realization. Life in the early stages is automatic. This is number 1 on the illustration. The mentation of the animal is almost subconscious lines, the satisfaction of its primitive wants, its desires. But after a bit, this primitive consciousness developed into what psychologists term consciousness, and then on into intellect, which is number 2 in the scale, which I put there. But sticking with number 1, the instinctive mind manifests varying degrees of consciousness, from an almost absolute subconsciousness to the simple consciousness. Simple consciousness is an aware of outside things, a perception or a recognition of other things than the self. That is a milestone. The consciousness is turned outward. The animal or man cannot think of his hopes and fears, his aspirations, his plans, his thoughts and then compare these thoughts with others of his kind without this next element. He cannot gaze inward and speculate upon abstract things. He simply takes what's for granted and asks no questions. Life is life. But as the animal progressed along the scale of evolution, certain things became necessary for its protection and well-being. It could not reason on these things, so the intelligence unfolded to the point that it could unfold, meet the situation, and deal with it. It aroused the fighting instinct in the brute for its preservation, and this action of the instinctive mind, very good for its purpose and essential for the preservation of the life of the animal, is still within us and occasionally asserts or projects itself into our mentality with a surprising degree of strength. There is a great deal of the old fighting spirit within us yet. Anger, rage, jealousy, lust, pride are all a part of it. The brute nature which can avert a pull down, exert a pull downward, can be countered by the levity given by the next phase of mentation, which I'll go to in a second. The subconsciousness, or level 1 on the diagram, is simply put as power without direction. Now we move on to the second principle, which occupies most of the figure of the man's face and only part of the dog's head. We now reach the mental principle, 2 on the scale, which distinguishes man predominantly from the brute. With the advent of the self-consciousness alluded to, man begins to form a concept of himself and his position amongst things. He begins to compare himself with others and reason about it. Man takes mental stock and drew conclusions from what he finds. He began to think for himself, to analyze, classify, separate, deduce. As he progressed, he began to think out things for himself, not reliant wholly on the subconscious. And with the unfoldment of the intelligence came the beginning of the wonderful achievements of the human man of today through the wonderful achievements of science, computing, maths, etc. But great as these achievements are, they are nothing as to what is before the human race. From victory to victory will the intellect progress as it unfolds into the next stage, which is in humanity. Before I talk about the next stage, I just want to say that the intellect is between the two. It's between number 1 and number 3 on the scale, and we can be influenced by either or both, and we must make a decision. We must look within ourselves, and we must not be dragged back into the animal mind through which we've passed. Manifest the I within and be strong, and recognize that you are an immortal soul and you are moving on and on to still greater things. The importance of the awakening of the self-consciousness may be more clearly recognized when it is said the secret doctrine is that until the self-consciousness is awakened into being, once the I has been felt and recognized, the awakened life of the individual can then begin, and only then can it begin. The intellect, or number 2 on the scale, is simply put as power with willed direction. Have you anything to add to that, Anne, before I go to the next level?
Very well done. I just was thinking, sometimes I look at animals and I see that we as humans are far more animal and beast-like than many animals. They are compassionate, kind, they don't worry, they're not unnecessarily cruel. But I think that we are far more beast than our animal friends.
Well, it is said that with the unfoldment of the intellect becomes, man has a responsibility to assert his intellectual mentation and conduct in a proper way by not exploiting the world, not exploiting animals. The world isn't simply put here as a playground for sensory delight. We have to recognize that that is the next big humanity, the goal that I see that humanity will have to go through, the destroying of the oceans. It's akin to destroying the fire of life, or the ocean which gives us water, or however you want to put it. So I think that that's the next big lesson for us to learn.
Hopefully we
While I
will.
move on to the next principle, which is number 3 on the scale, you'll see that it
Oh,
doesn't,
sorry.
it's
Sorry.
okay, it doesn't go through the animal head at all.
Yeah.
This is only an illustration. It's like fingers pointing at the moon. It is only illustrative. It doesn't mean to say that animals aren't sentient. It doesn't mean to say that animals aren't precious. It just means to say that I've split out the next stage, which is level 3 on the for my talk.
Very clear. Yes, thank
That
you.
relates to the spiritual mind. And remember the term spiritual, which I said before, it doesn't mean anything that we might perceive in the literal sense. I think you should look in the Oxford English Dictionary and see the sense of the word which best sits for you with this. There are many who are becoming conscious of the higher something within, the number 3 on the illustration. This leads us up to higher and nobler thoughts, higher desires, higher aspirations, higher deeds. And there is still a greater number of us who receive a faint glimmering, but do not perceive what it is. And in fact, it is said that the gloom is akin to the blackness of night until the involvement and unfoldment of level 3 on my illustration, the spiritual mind, gives orientation to man to assert his intellect properly. Man is ever unfolding, discarding sheath after sheath as he is slowly coming home. The light of the spiritual self, number 3 on the illustration, will shine eventually on all of us. All that we consider good, noble, and great in the human mind emanates from the spiritual mind as it gradually unfolds, and the ordinary consciousness then can take stock. Some Eastern writers prefer the term project rather than shine, but it doesn't matter, it's only a term. The spiritual mind is simply put as a recognition of the unity with love for all, and that life is indeed meaningless unless it is universal and coherent, and unless we maintain our existence by reason of the fact that we are part of the whole, not by reason of our own being, but the fact that we are a part of a greater something. The separation which exists between us, ourselves, and the world, which separates us from the universal life, is a trick of the mental world and is a physical fantasy. It is a nightmare which is put on humanity, as we are all one. And that is a quote loosely derived from Through the Gates of Gold, another seminal work by Mabel Collins. Have you anything to add to that, Anne?
Just that is one of the biggest things. If we would only understand that we are one another, we are like cells in one body, but we still believe so very strongly that there is an us and them when there is only a we. But that is the basis of these teachings, is for us to understand that we are not just connected. We always hear that New Ageism, all is one. But what does that mean? Oh, my all is one. Those ones have nothing to do with me. The dark, the light, and everything in between is us. This is all. We are everything, and we are each other, and we are one another.
Yes.
And that's what's so painful to watch. What's happening on the news, what's happening, well, since time began. The way man's inhumanity to man, it is sickening. We are doing this to ourselves. So go
that's
ahead.
The animal instinct within us, which is greed, lust, materialism, this heady materialism now, is very much supplanting humanity and regressing him back to a life filled with chattels and things, when it said in these wonderful teachings that, well, it says it in the Bible, doesn't it, that nothing can enter God that would enter through the eye of a needle. I can't really say any more succinct than that.
Very well
to draw on the
said.
Christian tradition.
Yeah,
so if we could move on to the next slide, please, Anne.
Yeah.
So just by way of illustrating how I come to understand this, I'll just read here a couple of quotes from the 14 lessons, the spiritual principles. Quote, "Intellect is cold, spiritual consciousness is warm and alive with high feeling. Man does not become kind and loving by cold reasoning. On the contrary, he becomes kind and loving because there arise within him certain impulses and desires coming from some unknown place. Seek that place. That is something to understand. And also, I'd like to move on to another great revelation that the 14 lessons, well, I suppose, spelt out to me in one of the wonderful chapters on thought dynamics. And I can't say any more succinct than thoughts are things. So, quote, we wish the student to particularly understand that when we say thoughts are things, we are not using the word in a figurative sense or in a fanciful way, but that we are expressing a literal truth. We mean that thought is as much a thing as is light, heat, electricity, or similar forms of manifestations. A revelation to understand that if you want something and work for something and wish for something and think about something, it will become manifest because you are linked to the greater whole through different channels than you would ever perceive, not the five senses alone, but there are more subtler planes and more finite planes than simple physical building a wall or making something out of wood. There are other ways of achieving things. Thought is a powerful ally to us, and Atkinson put that more beautifully in the following quote on the next slide. Thought is a force, a manifestation of energy, having a magnet-like power of attraction. Again, another tenet of Theosophy, the law of attraction, magnetic power, a clear reference to that if you think for something, if you wish for something, if you want for something in your heart, it will happen. It might not come around in the way you perceive. It might not happen in the time scale you perceive, but be sure that thought vibrations put and emanated out into the world are not lost into the ether. They are as akin to Marconi and his waves, or the remote control on your television, or whatever it is. It will go out and it will come back to you. And again, there is another warning here that if you wish for anything that involves injury or hurt to anybody else, it will come back to you as a boomerang. If you wish for material satiation of your wishes, you will get that. But you can wish for higher and more noble things, as referred to previously. I see references to Theosophy in so many areas, in art, music, science, maths. It's everywhere. And I also see it in common media or in a nursery rhyme, or which will be in the next slide, a very well-known Disney song, which we will move on to in a second. Have you anything further to add to that, Anne?
I want to get to that. We also had a comment here from Damon, who will hopefully help us out with the answer to this. They're well, really quick on the thoughts. Many people who are stumbling across this channel have heard of The Secret, where they say they're taking this ancient wisdom and talking about the power of thought. This is not something that has just come up recently. This has always been known, that thoughts are not just things that happen inside you that are to be dismissed as long as I don't, do anything about them, no one will know. They are a living force. And Yogi Ramacharaka, also known as William Walker Atkinson, says to choose them wisely.
Yes.
Choose them wisely. They are very real, like the electricity that's coming out of this bulb. So it is a very real thing, and it can manifest physical things in the way that The Secret talks about. That was a little bit commercialized, but there is power and there is truth in what they're talking about there, the power of thought. Pay attention to where your mind and your thoughts are at, because it is my understanding that those are like the rudders of the boat, and your emotions are the engine behind that. But anyway, that's only my understanding. But listen, what we're listening to here, this quote is ancient. This is not just Atkinson. This has been around since the beginning of time. Thought is a force, a manifestation of energy, having a magnet-like power of attraction. So don't just get lost in what the New Age movement has sprinkled throughout. Go and find the source, because it's here. Damon is writing here, and I know that he can help me out with this because I can't remember the third one. When these lessons are written, you will see at the end when it says we. When William Walker Atkinson is writing in these 14 lessons, it says we. In the Kabbalion, he also writes as the three initiates. I know that one of them is William Walker Atkinson writing as himself. The other one is Anna Kingsford. And Damon, I'm going to ask you for the third one, unless you know what it was, Lyndon. He's told me, and I've forgotten.
No, I
there
don't
is
know.
another name there, but when he talks as we, I take it as the collective consciousness, as well as higher beings. I'm not sure, Damon, can you answer that question? Damon is with us, he's joined us, and he's in the comment section, maybe he's typing right now. But in the 14 lessons, it does not say I, it does say we suggest, we say, and he's talking as a we. I always assume that that is the higher beings, the higher self, the brothers and sisters. The yogis, those that have come before, the masters of wisdom, or in the three initiates, they have been named. And Damon, maybe he will come in with that answer as we move along.
I can't remember the third one. Can you?
I cannot. Just Anna Kingsford, because I cannot look it up as we're sitting here. Wait, hang on. Edward, there he is. Edward Maitland. Edward Maitland, that is M-A-I-T-L-A-N-D, makes up the third. So that is in the three initiates in the Kabbalion, when William Walker Atkinson, who is writing under another pseudonym, the three initiates, it's William Walker Atkinson, Anna Kingsford, and thank you, Damon, for that. That is Maitland, M-A-I-T-L-A-N-D. Edward is the first name. See the things we learn? See the things we learn? So again, don't be creeped out by that. There have been avatars and sages and wise men and women who have come along before. These established religions are only just a sampling of the information that we've been given before. So we're looking for the commonalities of all of those here. If you're ready to move on to...
Please, the next one. So this is coming towards the end of the presentation. So this is just a quote that's put the secret of mental magic, which goes a little bit further from what I stated before from the quote. So, quote, all my investigations have led me away from the idea of a dead material universe tossed around by various forces to that of a universe which is absolutely all force, life, soul, thought, or whatever name we choose to call it. Every atom, molecule, plant, animal, or planet is only an aggregation of organized unit forces held in place by stronger forces, thus holding them for a time latent, though teeming with inconceivable power. All life on our planet is, so to speak, just on the outer fringes of this infinite ocean of force. The universe is not half dead, but all alive. Again, a wonderful quotation there that would take some further consideration to understand what's been said.
Do you know that, really quick, when I went to the Theosophical Society in 2014 and I asked if William Walker Atkinson was a member, they had said he was not. His membership was only found very recently. Yes. But he's obviously talking about, that's what he's talking about in here. This is an introductory, like a signpost to Theosophy, at least it was for me. And as it points towards light on the path.
Yes, it does, yeah.
These, which will lead back to the secret doctrine and so many other texts. Remember that when you read them, when you revisit them, more is revealed. Yes. So we are just sharing these with you. We're pointing you towards these texts so you can apply them, become them, and not only study them. It's not an intellectual journey, as Lyndon so brilliantly said today. It is one of application, and it is constant, and it would take lifetimes. And I can't remember if that was you that said that earlier today, or someone else, but yes, it would take lifetimes upon lifetimes, and that's what we're doing here. So thank you. Are you ready to move on to the next one?
Yes, please. So this is just to illustrate if we could move on. So the Disney classical song here, When You Wish Upon a Star, I remember listening to this as a young boy and really resonating, because the lyrics, which I'll read a little bit from in a minute, is again as Tapestry has said before, she sees Theosophy in so many different ways, that other people have passed this way before and seen things and can pass on a message to you through something as very commonplace as this wonderful song, which if we move on to the next slide, please, Anne.
Okay, sorry, just got a comment here. Yeah.
What's the comment saying?
Just really quick, Michael Long is saying, how odd, I am reading a book by him right now. He also wrote under 3 other names. The ones that I'm aware of are the 3 initiates, Yogi Ramacharaka. Let's see, hang on. There was one really, oh, the Hermes Trismegistus. I'm not sure which one are you reading, Michael. He owned a printer shop. Yeah, lived in Chicago. That's the same guy. I'm glad you're here, Michael. Welcome, welcome. We're just getting ready to wrap up. Lyndon, stick around for that. Then we'll have some questions or for some comments for those who are checking in on a Tuesday night. But go ahead, Lyndon, please.
So here, I won't read all of the lyrics. So what I will draw attention to is, when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. She brings to those who love the sweet fulfillment of their secret longing. Like a bolt out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you through. When you wish upon a star. Wow. There again, a reference to the law of attraction. Thoughts are things, how you are becoming and evolving to the person you want to be through these teachings. Again, a reference there. So I see it so often in so many different ways. As Tapestry said, even in my work life, I can see references and understand things through Theosophy in this way.
Yeah, astrology, astronomy, everything is explained. The elementals, the earth itself, all of the elements. You can go through all plant life. You can go into the ghost realm, the astral plane, dreams, thoughts, you name it.
Cosmogony, cosmology, science, it's all referred to. Yeah.
Everything, it's all in here, and it isn't just a tiny bit, it's everything is in these teachings of Theosophy. Theos meaning gods, Sophia meaning wisdom. This is the ancient knowledge that belongs to all and solely to none. This tiny little channel that has, like, I don't know, 4,300 people that subscribe, and there's a few of you here. There's 10 of you are here with us live now, but there will be some rewatchers. This is just us coming together humbly to be of service, to introduce you to these teachings if you've not met them before. This is not happening by accident. Take a look at the texts and see how they feel when you apply them, because I know that's how Lyndon and I met. He contacted me and said, I have to tell you, that text has changed my life. And I have to say to him, I have to tell you, that's why I read it, because I mean, I voiced it and put it up online because I recognized how important, and it continues to deliver. Life still offers challenges. Life is not perfect. When things are difficult, we're learning. When things are good, we get to rest. The cycle never stops. These things need to be put into application. These teachings need to be put into application at all times, especially when things are difficult and heartbreaking. That is when we are learning the most. I wanted to say, Gary Kitchell, talking about astronomy and astrology. He is an esoteric astrologer. He's going to be talking about the 7 rays next Sunday. We will be back on Zoom live. Gary will be with us again. We have Petra will be coming up again. We also have many other folks coming, but I may change the way things are working here, because it doesn't have to be a presentation. We may actually just have a seated circle where we can speak and talk. So I want to say hello and welcome to everyone who's here, Damon and Michael and Robert, and the rest of you. I cannot see your names there, but I'm thinking there's got to be a way for us to be able to do this a little bit more organically and much smoother presentation without microphone dramas and Zoom dramas. Lyndon, well done. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Anne. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
When you wish upon a star, when you were little, you understood what that meant. That wasn't fantasy.
Yes, it resonates with something deep down. I suppose really, if you read Byron or Blake, or you look at in the garden at Gethsemane, or you're moved by something, it's that element within, and it refers to that, the level 3 on the illustration for me, that how that's it's an evolving and unfolding process. But to deny that would be to deny an integral part of me, as it would be for you. To recognize that is the next step, really, very much. I can see.
As you talk about nature, we talk about the undiscovered laws of nature and the powers latent in humanity. A majority of the people come into this channel for the psychic powers chapter in this book. That's what they're coming in for, because people want to have access to these abilities that are beyond the five senses. Again, you gave a very clear warning that if it is used to control someone else or for selfish means, then it will backfire upon you. If you're using it
Return to sender.
Return to sender, is that what you said?
Yeah, it will do. It will.
It comes back at you in a way that I mean, that's why people say, well, psychics, can't they win the lottery and blah, blah, blah. If you use it for anything outside of for the betterment of humanity, all beings, and a selfless service, you will find that it will hurt you. But when I go to Glastonbury and I ask about the Theosophical book section, and it's always quite abandoned and small, I expect it to be heaving. They often say that they found that a lot of people are looking for spell books on how to cast spells to control others. And I will tell you here that is, well, you can try that, but I highly recommend not doing that, because you will suffer far more than what you are currently suffering at the moment. But know that you are capable of so much more for the best interest of all. And you mentioned, Lyndon, the quotes on the back of in the Voice of the Silence, this compassion that you have, this empathy that you have. Hast thou attuned thy being to humanity's great pain, O candidate for light? I know, I recognize it in you. I feel it from you. You are an empath, and you're here because you care and because you want to share these teachings with others who I believe can benefit from them as well. So there will be links to these books for free. You can get them for free. You can hear them for free on this channel. Damon is saying very well presented, Lyndon.
Thank you, Damon.
Of the guy who's hosting your diploma course. So that's kind of a thumbs up from the boss. That's pretty good.
That's good going, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Very well done. And Damon, oh, the drama we had. Oh, you should have seen Lyndon. So patient, so amazing. We had Zoom dramas, mic dramas, all kinds of stuff, but it was smooth. It was beautiful. It was obviously meant to be this way. Lyndon S. Smith. Again, if you want to find out more, I will link back to your Facebook page, perhaps, if you wish, or I will just link them to the back to the books so they can study as well. It is an honor to know you. You are a precious and cherished friend, and I just love you so much. Thank you for spending this hour with us, Lyndon.
It's been wonderful. Thank you for having me, Anne. I very much feel the same to you as well.
Oh, I love you. Thank you. And we're just students on the path. It's not about us. Theosophy is about you. So Theosophy for all, not only the few. So watch for those links to come up. Give me a few hours in post-production to get this up. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And again, we'll be back on Sunday, fingers crossed, with Gary Kidgel again. We'll be coming back talking about the 7 rays. And Petra will be returning as well. And Lyndon, I'd love to have you back.
I would be delighted to come back again in the not too distant future.
Everybody. I love you. Oh, I love you so much. Love to all. Big kiss to you, sweetheart. I'm going to close out now while we got everything is connected. So we'll see you guys on Sunday night, and stay tuned for the links to come up shortly. All the love in the world to you, Lyndon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Anne. Thank you.
Bye, sweetheart.